All right, so welcome to this month's membership chat here at District 6690. For those of you, I think I've probably met everyone on this call, but I'm Jenny. I volunteer with the district and I do membership work here at District 6690. We've been hosting these chats every month, every couple months or so, and the topics rotate. And we have a member on our district membership team, Hugo Trucks, who has been a member of the Columbus Rotary since 1990. And he is a bit of an expert in recruiting new members. And we snagged him up a few years ago to join our district team to be our new member engagement coordinator. So if you are a newer member or you've talked to some of your newer members, they've all received a personal, handwritten note and a gift from the district. And Hugo actually personally writes all of those notes every single month and sends them out to our new members. So I asked Hugo to join us tonight for the membership chat to do a 1-hour session on new member recruitment. And I picked him, one, because he's on the membership team, but also he really is, he practices what he preaches in terms of recruitment. I think in the emails I sent you, I had said that he had personally sponsored 48 new members over the years, but since the number has grown, because now it's 49 new members that he has sponsored during his tenure as a member of Columbus Rotary, including maybe a couple who have went on to find great heights in Rotary, and one who may even be a district governor on this very call. So I'm going to turn it over to Hugo.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Great to be here. So I want to share how I approach recruitment, and it's not necessarily the answer, not necessarily the best for everybody. I want to share how I do it. And the reason I got into recruiting is how many of you, when you go to a restaurant or somewhere, give feedback? I do it on Yelp. I go to a restaurant, I like the restaurant, or I hate the restaurant or hotel. I always give feedback. And the bad restaurants or bad hotels, I share with my friends. Don't go there, they're horrible. And the good ones I rave about. And it's a matter of just sharing what you like. And most of us do that. Most of us I found a really great restaurant, a great pizza parlor, I got a great car. You share what you like. And I was that way with Rotary. When I got accepted to Rotary, I loved it. And I like to share the good things. And that's why I started recruiting. So it wasn't a numbers game. It has never been a numbers game. It's something I just share with my friends. So here's how I do it. So next slide, please. This is me in a nutshell. I'm a Rotarian since 1990, recruited nearly 50 people. And professionally, I'm a political scientist. I'm a marketing guy. That's what I do for a career. And that's me in a real small nutshell. Next slide. So what tools do you need to be successful for recruitment for Rotary? Anybody have idea what tools you need?
Yourself.
Anybody? Okay, next slide.
So,
Next. Hugo, I think we had someone that was trying to unmute. Was someone trying to unmute?
You have to have some knowledge of Rotary and a commitment to Rotary.
Aha. You got it, touche. Next slide. That's all you really need is commitment. You've got to want to do it. You've got to be interested, and that's what makes you a successful recruiter. So the 5 steps I'm going to take is how I do it. But you're right. That's the one tool you need in your toolbox. Next slide. So the first step is identifying a prospect. You've got to identify a target that you want to go after, somebody you like. And how do you identify a prospect? Where do you find prospects? Next slide. So I find prospects anywhere, and I suggest you look for anybody that you know and respect. It's really important that somebody you respect that you want to be associated with, not just anybody just because they're a human being or they're alive, but somebody you respect. And I personally try to find people who are better than me, and that's not very hard. I try to find people who are better, who are really good people, who are going to give a lot to Rotary, and who are going to be good for Rotary, and it's going to be good for them. So some of the ideas I brainstormed are your neighborhood, your workplace, your church or place of worship, or a sports club or gym or a group. And I think I have found people everywhere. Yeah. Neighborhood is a lady down the street. She's since moved to Washington State, but she's down the street. I met her walking my dog one day, and she just moved to Columbus and was new. And she joined Rotary and was with us for about 9 months and then moved out. So your family, your business competitor, and that may surprise you, but you know, a business competitor is not necessarily your enemy. Bring them on board. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's going to help. It's going to help them and make a better connection. And they might actually be an ally. You're a customer or supplier, a visitor, a speaker to your club. I remember we had a speaker at our club, and I raised my hand for question and answer. I said, "How come you're not in a Rotary? You sound like a Rotarian." And the person joined. So anybody have other ideas? Okay, it's a person-to-person process. That's the important thing. It's one-on-one, so it's not automatic. I don't think placing ads in newspapers or billboards are going to help, but it's a person-to-person process. The best thing to do is make a list, and the next page, there's a list there. And I have my list right here. I just updated it this week. I got the top 4, and then I have about 15 more names. So I work on these people periodically. I bring it up. I contact them, talk to them, see what's going on. I make notes myself. And next slide. Yeah, you got the slide already. So I don't have it yet. So if you keep a list of your prospects, you can see what order they are when you talked to them last, and what they said, and how you should follow up. I have some people who are kind of busy with a new job, and they said maybe next year. So I got a tickler set up for them for next year. So it's still a checklist. I like to work on checklists. I'm very compulsive that way. Next slide. This is probably the hardest in the whole thing, is introducing a subject, broaching a subject. So you've got somebody in mind. How do you start with that? First of all, you have to know what Rotary is. And the first thing you ever mention the word Rotary out of most people, they're going to say, "What's Rotary?" If you can't answer that, you're going to be in trouble. You're never going to recruit them. So you should have an elevator speech in top of your mind. And I got a couple of main points here. It's a worldwide fellowship of business, professional, community leaders. I like the word fellowship. I can tell people how big it is, 1.4 million members, about 46,000 clubs worldwide. And that impresses people. We're dedicated to service for others, promote integrity in our pursuits and lives, advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace. That's a mouthful. Then they'll say, how do you do it? Or you may want to start talking about how you do it. And we do it through Polio Plus, trying to wipe out polio in the world, youth and professional changes, local projects, and I give examples of local projects, scholarships, weekly presentations, and other things you do. Tailor this for yourself, whatever feels comfortable. It's your elevator speech, not mine. And then make it personal, what it means to you. So I tell people I'm a Rotarian since 1990 because I get, and then tell them what you get out of it, why it's important to you, why it's meaningful. This is your elevator speech. You get this down, you're halfway home. The next slide. And what are the benefits of being part of Rotary? Everything in life and selling is all about benefits. And people who don't know how to sell, like I did a long time ago, talk about me. But selling is talking about you and what you get. And on the left, there's the word benefit. And these sum up all the benefits in the world. Every benefit you can think of ends up in there. And some people emphasize, like politicians emphasize fear. If you don't elect me, you're going to get this. Time issues are going to make you time, make you smarter, more beautiful, richer. These are all in there. As far as Rotary, I made a list of myself here. What you get out of it, increase your community contacts, the chance to get back to the community, to be more involved, acquire more skill and experience like public speaking, leading groups, fundraising. I've done this a lot, and very often people volunteer for their profession. I rarely volunteer in my profession. I volunteer in something I don't do well. So for my church, I didn't know much about finance. I became my church treasurer. Didn't know about fundraising. I volunteered to be a fundraiser and raised, I think, 10% new funds that year. It's a way of learning new skills. If you're not a good speaker or afraid to speak or having how much experience, become a public speaker. If you're in a job where you don't lead committees or don't lead people, you can lead people in committees and Rotary and pick up new skills. And that's free, just a little bit. And you'll get help too. Actually, I just found an old worksheet I had on how to lead committees. I'm happy to do a presentation on leading committees sometime. Get outside your profession, expand your horizons. This is a big one for me. Everybody lives in their own narrow little world. And Rotary lets you expand your horizon. Remember one time I was talking to a Rotarian, he ran an elevator company, and he told me about elevators. Elevators call home when a bearing or something is weak. They notify headquarters that this bearing is weak, needs to be changed. It's very far from my professional area, but I found it fascinating to learn about something else. And when you learn about something else, you sometimes find a transition back to your own world. So that's a very useful thing, a Rotarian, and meeting other people. Hear good speakers and out of your professional world. We had a really good speaker again Monday at Rotary. So that's really nice. Help the world make a better place and get new clients. Frankly, that was the original goal of Rotary when it first started. They even kept track if you did business with other Rotarians. Now, that's not the goal of Rotary, but it does happen. I've gotten a few clients. I'm sure practically everybody has, because you meet people, and marketing is a relationship thing. It's people to people, you meet people. It's eyeball to eyeball, and that happens. People respect you, and they ask you what you do, and say, I have a problem with my business. Can we talk sometime? Not at Rotary. You can find if you do the Rotary meetings, do it outside. And I left some space there for some other ideas, other benefits, being part of Rotary. And you're welcome to put your own in. And next slide, you got it already. So how do you bring up the subject of Rotary? Again, you mentioned the benefits. Here's some examples of have you heard about Rotary? We talked about a great speaker you had. My first introduction to Rotary in 1990, actually it was late 89, was a board member who came back from a Rotary meeting downtown Columbus. He talked about a great speaker he just had. I never even heard of Rotary. And when I investigated, that's when I got interested in it. So, people are interested in that. I'd love to keep in touch with you more and see you more often, maybe by you joining Rotary. I've gotten some people with that who I didn't see very often, and you could see them much more often, sometimes weekly, if they join Rotary. And a lot of these I've actually used. One time we had a person making a pitch for Rotary, and I said, right during a meeting, I said, well, you sound just like a Rotarian. Have you ever considered being one? He said no, and he joined. He's still a member. He's also became Rotarian of the Year of our club. And that's because he sounded like a Rotarian, and he just never heard of it and never were part of it. I think he'd be good for Rotary because, and I think Rotary would be good for you, and you'd be good for Rotary. It's a two-way street. And a lot of times people bring skills to Rotary that we can use, and Rotary is good for them. And sometimes people are talking to you about a need they have, or they're not connected at home, or they're too tied up, or a lot of problems. You may say, did you know there's a group that's perfect for a need you described? It's our Rotary. Some other ways is to wear your pin or logo, mention Rotary on LinkedIn, on your website. Now, our Rotary rules say you don't advertise being a Rotarian, but you can mention it to you're a member of a club, like on LinkedIn, or posting something about a speaker or something. That's a good way. And like any sales project, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you listen twice as much as you talk. So listen to get to know your prospect, listen to their needs, find out what's on their mind, listen more than talking. And that's a good way to recruit people. It's a good way to sell anything, is to listen more than talk, whether it's cars, houses, professional services, whatever. So it's your selling benefits. Next slide. Next is shared experience. You know about samplers. You go to a grocery store or Costco and they have samples there. And samples always are really exciting. And I realized why, because one time I got a sample in a store, got a little piece of steak. It was wonderful. And I circled around a couple minutes later and took a second little sample. It wasn't as good. And I realized the first hint of something new in your mouth is really refreshing and challenging. And that's the whole secret of giving samples in a store. Anyhow, by inviting people to Rotary, this is their sampler. It's a taste test. It's a hands-on experience, a test drive. It's a house tour, whatever you want to call it. They got experience. They're not going to join Rotary just because you told them about it. You got to bring them as a guest. And some Rotary clubs allow guests to come in for free, and other ones usually the host pays. Sometimes the guest pays. But you bring them to a meeting that's going, especially one that's going to interest them. So if it's a speaker talking about manufacturing or law or whatever, maybe that's the program to bring them to, something that's going to interest them. And once they're there, introduce them around. Tell everybody this is John Smith. He's a member. He's a guest, and he works such and such a place. And hopefully he's a future Rotarian. You'll see people's eyes light up. Oh, he's a future Rotarian. That makes it very exciting. Or if you can't bring him to a meeting, bring him to a social event or a civic project. If you're doing a club run or a kayak event, any kind of event, bring them to that. That's very exciting for them. Next slide. This is get feedback or follow up after you met with people, and ask for the sale. One of the things people often forget in sales is asking for the sale. And there's indirect ways of doing it. There's fun ways of doing it. It's also called closing. But after you've had somebody to a meeting or event, what do you think about us? What do you think about the meeting? Discuss specifics. When we meet every Monday in our club, what the due structure is, what the obligations are and aren't. Some people say, I can't meet every week. Well, we don't have an obligation meeting every week anymore. We used to have rules like 50% of the time, but not anymore. But, and when can I send you an application form? It's not good to say, can I send you one? When can I send you one? Don't ask yes or no questions. And then this is part of following up, asking for the sale. And next slide. Now, people may have objections, and that's normal. And a common rule of thumb for objections is listen, react, and respond to the little box on the left there. So clarify the objection, listen to what they're telling you, and acknowledge it. Acknowledge that I understand what you're saying. Don't say they're wrong. Other people say that, but found that. So other people say they're busy, but found that they make time for Rotary because they're getting something out of it. And respond. Did you or they misunderstand? Am I answering your question properly? Am I giving enough information? So validate what they're saying and tell them what's going on. Next, here's some different specific objections. Time. People often say they haven't got time. Most people have time pressures, but busy people have even more time pressures, but they make time for Rotary because they ultimately get more back than they put in. And tell people this, it's worth it. And people have time for what they want to do. Short lunch hours, Can they compensate? Companies will treat it as a benefit. They understand it's investment. They can understand that this is good for their company. So they'll let you take some time off because you're spreading your company's business and information. Can you do a Zoom meeting sometime? You don't have to come every time. People are overcommitted. I understand that's not a good place to be. Maybe Rotary can add some balance to your life. Give back to the community or church. Few of us here solely belong only to Rotary. They belong to other things too. So it's a way to give back to the community. And can't afford it financially. I just had a person this month who was ready to join and really couldn't afford it financially. It's a question of value though. And if they really can't do it, I understand that. But certain clubs have special fee structures for young professionals, for seniors, for second family members. That may help. Mention tax deduction possibilities because it's a business expense. People don't think it's a business expense, but it's really marketing and education. And I'm not a financial advisor, but I think that justifies or qualifies. Next. Then we get commitment. So people are interested, you send in the application form, stay in touch with them in timetables and bird dog your club if they're slow in processing. So make sure that your candidate knows it's being processed and what the steps are and how long it's going to take, and stay after whoever's taking care of it to make sure it's done. Then let the onboarding begin. And that's when they're a member. So how do you eat an elephant? I'm not a born salesman by any means. And sales was kind of overwhelming when I first started in this process. I found this paradigm. I didn't invent this, but it's a 5-step paradigm. It's really, really brilliant. It's awareness. So when you're trying to sell any product, any service, any belief, it's awareness. They have to know about it first. Then they have to understand it. Then they have to believe what they're hearing. Then they got to try it out. And then they have satisfaction. Then they're on board. This is a really nice paradigm. And in marketing, there are different steps for this. Like advertising doesn't take care of all 5 steps. So people think you can advertise your way to success. Advertising only raises awareness and comprehension, but the trial gets to believability and satisfaction once they're there. This is a really nice paradigm, which I found very, very useful in breaking down the sales process. So in sum, you need commitment, identify the targets, introduce the subject, introduce your guest, bring them as a guest, follow up, ask for a sale, and then process the application. And then we'll have now questions and answers. You may want to work on this as a club membership director. What are you going to do next? Is this going to be useful for you? As a Rotary Club member, what are you going to do? So this is a chance for people to share what they might do as a membership director or as a Rotary Club member, and also questions and answers. And I got a surprise slide at the end of this. So I'd like to hear from everybody a little bit.
And if you want to do the raise hand feature, so we're not talking over, I can unmute you or kind of send you or add them to the chat and I can read them out. So if you want to use the raise hand feature, I can help you unmute.
I don't think I understood the question. You're asking for input on these, like these 2 questions here?
Yeah, it's your move for next step. So some people are here as just Rotary Club members. Other people are here as club membership directors. And what's your take from this? What can you do differently? What can you do? Where you think could go next to improve, to help recruiting in your club or you as a person? You're going to start people are going to start their own list for prospects, or Are you gonna have education sessions in your club?
I think Mike Knoll has his hand up, so we'll go to Mike and then I'll keep an eye out for other hands. And so Mike, go ahead.
I think one of the things that we tried to do in our club was to look and see why people weren't joining. And one of the things we kept butting our head against was the cost for meals. And so basically we changed the guidelines or the requirements of not being there every Monday, but set up with the idea that, you know, the due structure was set up for at least one meeting a month that you paid for a meal. So at least you were at least getting involved with people. And then with the idea that if a member then was at a social event or at a project thing, that they were going to get probably as much as many Rotarians ever get. So I think basically looking for what in your club is holding you back from adding members.
Mm-hmm. That's very useful.
I see past District Governor Steve's hand up, and then we can go to DG and Gary and then Michelle. So we'll start with Steve Heiser.
Yeah, I mean, you go, one of the other things was, as a club membership chair, whatever, I think obviously you have to implore members of your club to be thinking about bringing new members in. And I think club leadership has to make it a major goal of their, of the club for that, for year after year after year at this point, as we're not gaining members yet in our district. Well, we're up. We're positive this year so far. That's great. But I think one of the things in Rotary is traditionally in many clubs we do contests, which are great for but then that's the time when most clubs think about membership, is maybe when you're doing that contest, and it's not emphasized as much throughout the rest of the year. So there's that focus for that month or two on membership. And I think it has to be something that's thought about, that's done. I think we have to do more recognition for membership. I mean, one of the things that Jenny and I have talked about, hopefully we'll start. I mean, I think we have to have, we're doing the membership awards at the awards banquet, which is great. And I think we have to emphasize that throughout the year, that there are these awards out there that clubs can win, that clubs can be honored for, and think about it then, not in a wrap up that the district membership chair does at the end of the year.
You gave me a good idea, Steve, and that's it's almost Christmas card time. How about everybody ask their club, when you're writing a Christmas card list for Christmas cards, as you write the list, who on that list would be a prospective Rotarian, and put them on your own recruitment list. Because you go through all your friends and phone books and whatnot and say, that person would be a real good Rotarian. And then start the process. We ought to ask all the club presidents to do that.
That's a great idea. I saw Gary's hand up, and then we can go to Gary, then Michelle.
So I think it's just got to be a priority constantly. It really has to be at the top of the club's objectives. I think we kind of hit it for a little while, then we're kind of off on something else. I just think we have to continue to stress the importance of it and make it a priority.
Good point. Michelle, if you want to unmute, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Hugo, for all this great information. In addition to everything that the others have said in recruiting and the examples that you gave in recruiting, for me right now, I'm looking at it and kind of bringing it back to, this is all really basic information. So it's just basic recruiting, basic sales. And how can I use that back with our club members, our existing members, because we're having some significant challenges, especially in the area of engagement and just keeping our existing members, in love with Rotary and in love with the projects that we're doing. So for me, it's how can I take this information and bring it back to them? Having conversations, having one-on-one with existing members, and re-engaging them as a Rotarian, using some of this information, using some of these tools, and then from there, obviously building and engaging new members. But for me, initially, it's just given where we're at right now, taking this to our existing members.
Yeah.
And maybe reminding them where they can find prospective members. People may just think it's too big of an elephant, and maybe give them some categories like we had here: your neighbors and people in your club and workers. And
all right, we
Yeah.
have lots of hands up now. I do want to, before we go to the hands, I want to point out Greg Berkmeyer from our neighboring district in 6670 shared when a prospect might not fit in our club, can't get away for a long lunch, et cetera, help that person to attend or join another club. Yeah, help steer them in the right direction to find the club that fits for them. And then Sandy shares an equal emphasis on keeping members, which I agree as well. And we'll definitely make sure that that's kind of, I think that was our last membership chat as well, but we'll make sure that we add another discussion on that too, so folks can really focus on sharing ideas. So great point. Sandy's digital hand isn't working, so she used the chat. So then we can go to Marty, Dave Unger, and then Dave Dewey.
Okay, my first one is just a little thing that worked surprisingly well. In my last district, our club would work on like community projects, maybe clean up the beach or trash, something where you'd have other people volunteering for things. And we had just little cards, little business cards made up. Our meeting was where it was and all that stuff. And people would say, and they'd see us with our shirts laughing and doing silly stuff. And I go, so what is this? And we just whip out a card and say, this is what it is. Come, your first lunch is on us. And we surprisingly got members that way. It little, cheap, not expensive, and it worked. The other thing I was going to say is what you and I think Sandy just addressed, and that is retention. And I know we talk about it, but every time you talk about membership, you got to talk about retention. And I think
Right.
that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Marty. And if anyone wants samples of those kind of calling cards or informational cards like Marty is talking about, I have several samples. Some of the clubs in our district use them. So shoot me a quick email and I can send you some templates and examples if you want to do something like that. It's a really, really, really cool idea. I actually remember one of the very first time, actually it might've been the very first time I met Hugo in person, and he handed me a card that had tons of info on it about sales and marketing. And actually I still have that card today. I actually looked at it recently because I was trying to remember the acronym he had shared with me. All right, next up I have Dave Unger, and then we'll go to Dave Dewey.
Thanks, Jenny. And thanks, Hugo. Some really good points in there. And I will say, as the chair of the district PI committee, when you started off with ads and social media posts don't get you members, I can't agree with you more. It's about personal relationships, and I think that's right on. And where I have struggled, and I think my club has struggled, is finding a venue where it seems like a natural place to talk about Rotary or invite people in to talk about it. Other professional events, there's just a lot of things going on. Sometimes I can work it in the conversation, but not always. So one of the things that we want to try is doing a community happy hour. It's not a Rotary happy hour, although it is sponsored by Rotary. But it's a community leaders happy hour where people come and just talk about what are you trying to do within the community? Where do you need help? And maybe we're part of the equation for any given task, or maybe we're not. But the point is to get the people in the same room to just start that conversation.
Mhm.
Great points. More hands. We have Dave Dewey, and then we'll go to Don Trombley.
Thanks, Jenny. I think one thing that I see from the standpoint of clubs, I think you've got a public image, and obviously you do projects, and we need to do a good job of sharing what we're doing in the community so people can see that. But I think taking the step, I think it's step one, but taking the step one and having every member sort of identify, and I think we all look for, I would just say, younger members of the club, because people that are up and coming in the community, that are neighbors, all those lists, people we work with, civic leaders, civic association, those kind of it, and having everybody try to get to prospects and creating an ownership of the club. I think what a lot of clubs do is they say, well, okay, you're the membership chair, go get 5 people and that's your job, and check the box and you're good. It's really every member's job to bring and invite people. And I think it has to be made an emphasis, maybe using this as maybe this is a meeting going over membership and why it's important and how we want this to continue. But I think until everybody understands what it can be and what it's for, I think that brings more ownership of all people in the club. Just a thought.
That's a really good point, because it is everybody's job. I mean, the membership committee's job is not to bring in the members, it's to help coordinate and inspire, but it's every member's job to bring in new members.
We don't have 3 Hugos. We need more people.
All right, Don Trombley, I see your hand up. If you want to unmute, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I've been in Rotary for, I think it's 34 years now. And I've probably brought in, I don't know, I've lost track, 30, 40 members. You have to ask, okay? And I'm going to give you an example of our meeting last week. We have a program called Honoring Our Students, Student of the Month. And one of the students' fathers was an exchange student years ago. So after the thing was over, I walked up to him and I said, "You were an exchange student." And I talked to him for a minute. I said, "How come you're not a Rotarian?" And there were 3 or 4 people standing around me, and they all had blank looks on their faces. And I said, "Why aren't you a Rotarian?" He says, "Well, I'm really time-wise." He says, "I don't know if I can make every meeting every week." I said, "Well, we don't have the strict meeting requirements anymore." I said, could you just make 1 meeting a month and then commit to maybe helping us with our fundraisers and stuff?" He said, "Yeah, I could do that." So I gave him an application. So we're standing there, and then his daughter come up to us, and I said, "Boy, you're really sharp." I said, "I'm really proud that you're here today." And I said, "Have you ever heard of Interact?" And she said, "No." And I got her interested in Interact. So my point is, after spending 28 years in the military and then working as an insurance salesman and then a financial planner, you don't get anything done unless you ask. All right. I've been here 2 years, a little over 2 years. I've moved up from Florida, and I brought in 4 members, and I don't even get out anywhere to see or meet anybody because I'm 83 years old. Okay. So my only recruiting place is the Rotary meetings. You got a speaker there or a family member of a student or somebody as a guest, you got to ask them, "What do you think of what you saw today?" And they'll say, "Well, we like it." "Well, have you ever considered maybe joining?" "No, nobody's ever asked me." I said, "Well, I'm asking you." And you give them an application. So that I just blows my mind that we let people come to the meetings and they have a good time and we don't ask them to join. It's ridiculous. That's my point.
A great point, and a great point. Thank you for sharing. And then I saw Steve Heiser's hand pop up there. Steve. it's your-
Yeah, well, really, this is back to Hugo. Hugo, the one thing you didn't, that I don't remember you mentioning is how long, you know, between the time you ask someone to be a member and the time they become a member, talk about that journey and the length of time it may take, which you've related to me in the past.
Yeah, sometimes it's as quick as 1 month. I bring somebody to come right away to a meeting and they like it and they say, I think I want to do this. I think Steve, you signed up, I think within a month or two. There's a person I just brought in this week who just joined. Took 6 years. He was my mentee. He was an Ohio State student. He was a military graduate already. He's finished West Point and he came back to graduate school. He's out of the military now. And I've been working with him. I worked with him through his first job. We stayed in touch with him. He's finally now in a position with his career he can get away. And he finally joined. So that took 6 years. So, and some really good points were raised. I've gotten people into other clubs. Not all 49 have come to our club. People live out of town or moved. One person lived in Delaware, worked in Columbus, so lived in Delaware City. I said, why don't you join a Delaware club? She did. Another person hasn't lived here for 30 years, but lived in Columbia, South Carolina. I said, join a Columbia club. She said, oh, I'll look into it. And trying to recruit somebody to join a club in Budapest. And you look up the club, his best form, and contact the president of the club and say, I got a prospect here. Will you invite him? And they're very happy. And so, yeah, but Steve, it varies. It varies by the person and the opportunity. One person I asked, he came to make a presentation to our committee. I asked him, you sound like a Rotarian, and he said, nobody's ever asked me. And he joined, I think, the next day. Anybody else? Your comments are really useful. You guys are great. And retention is a good point. I mean, it's always easier, they say in advertising and sales, easier and cheaper to keep a client than bring in a new one. And a lot of companies only care, it depends on a reward structure. We don't have reward structures in Rotary. But if you have a bad reward structure that rewards a salesman for bringing in new customers, but not for keeping them, then the second they're signed in, they don't know your name. They're going, bye-bye, I'm going to the next guy, and that's bad news. But retention is a different issue, and I don't know if the district has a retention committee separate from marketing or recruiting, but that's an important project. Once they're in, you want to make them feel needed and wanted. That's the whole onboarding process and the whole retention. That's a whole different issue. It's also a very important one. I'm glad somebody raised that.
Well, Hugo, I see 2 more hands raised before. I know you have a bonus slide to surprise everyone before we leave. So we'll go back to Donald Trombley and then Steve Heiser again. So Mr. Trombley, take the floor.
I just want to add one thing. You know, you're talking about retention. I found out through the years that the quality of the candidate you bring, some people just throw them against the wall, hope they stick, and they're gone in a year and a half. And I found that your recruit has to be able to control their own calendar. If especially at a lunch meeting, if the recruit can't control their own time and calendar, they're not going to be a good Rotarian if they can't come to the meetings, because they're going to fall by the wayside. And lots of times I've seen clubs just, you know, get anybody to join. But if that person is not, you know, high enough up in the job where they're working to control their calendar and be able to get away and go to meetings, then they're not going to be, there's a good possibility they're not going to last long. That's all I have.
Very good point.
And then I thought I saw Steve Heiser's hand up
Yeah.
one more.
Yeah, Yeah, I took it down after you corrected me. The thing about persons in volunteer service organizations is, as you say, money isn't the motivator. So what the way that you keep people involved is to have, is to make the organization, interesting for them. The benefits more than the cost, and you have to give them basically you have to recognize them in a number of different ways. I mean, recognition is your motivation. The fact that you're doing good things and that you're being recognized for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's extremely important. So I know in Rotary we have all these awards and this or that, but you need that because that's the only way. That's one of the motivational ways that we keep members, to know that somebody is recognizing all the good work they're doing. So you can never recognize someone too often in a volunteer service organization.
And that recognition falls under the E in ego issues on the benefits chart. Yeah. And people like to have their plaques on a wall and certificates. That's a very good point, Steve.
Great. I think I saw Donald Trumbull, your hand's back up again.
Yeah, I have one. I don't want to steal all the time here, but I have one thing. Stephen, were you at the district conference where they showed the fireside chat slides?
Yes.
I was the one that did that. I did that years and years ago.
I know.
And I found that you got to do a fireside chat with the new people. If you're not doing that, you can't get all the information out to the people. You bring some people in your club that got experience, you sit down, do the fireside chat. And at that time, you get them committed. You find out what really floats their boat. What would you really be interested in when you go through all the avenues of service and everything? And you get them committed before they even raise their hand to join the club.
Great.
That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I like that.
Oh, I think I saw Mike Knowles shaking his hand at the screen. So Mike Knoll.
Just a quick note, that is something the training committee is looking at, is trying to set up fireside chats in regions to have the new members of each of those clubs either in a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting to have exactly that fireside chat. So they learn more about it and try to retention. So just I'll put a plug in for that. That's coming out after the holidays.
Cool. You gotta feel needed. I spent 2 years, our Rotary, when I joined, we had almost 500 members. It took me 2 years to find my place. I joined a bunch of committees. I just sat there. I felt I wasn't needed. So I just kept switching committees till I found a place where I felt I was needed. And then I was off and running. So my final slide is, I'll give you a little story first. I worked in an ad agency and one of the artists gave me an ad for one of my clients. And what do you think about this ad? And I had no idea how to evaluate an ad. How do you evaluate an ad? I mean, you can do a test if it works, but that's the client's money. How do you know a priori what a good ad is? And so I started doing some research and I came across, next slide, please, the ultimate communication test. And I found this incredibly powerful. So it's by a guy by the name of Alvin Eichhoff. And it's a 3-part, tease them, please them, seize them. And it's really powerful. This works not only in advertising, it works in writing a letter, a job letter, it works in dating, it works in selling anything. So in making announcements at Rotary. So tease them is the first part. You've got to get the people focused from a wide angle lens, zoom in on you. So when a speaker gets up on a committee at our club, for example, they'll wear a silly hat, like a golf hat or something. And that's to get you focused, get you out of your world where it's a broad vision and zoom in on you. That's a tease. That's why you have headlines. That's why you have pictures and advertising. That's why the volume is up on TV commercials. So first you got to get their attention. Next is you got to satisfy the curiosity or attention you just arose, but please them. Then you got to tell them the information you want to give them, you want to show, you want to entertain, you want to teach. And that's the body of an ad. That's your sales pitch. And then third one, which is often forgotten by people that sees them, get the sale. And that's, you got to close. That's the close. So ask them to join. So you ask them if they know about Rotary. You tell them what Rotary is about. You bring them to a meeting. They let them sample it, and you get the sale. So this communication formula works in practically any endeavor that you're likely to be involved in. This is a really powerful thing. And I've told students, I even wrote an article about job dating. It's basically the same thing. It's basically the three-part communication formula. It's very, very powerful. And I use this a lot. It's real catchy. Tease them, please, and seize them. And that was the name of our show. So that's all I have. I thank you all for coming. And I'd love to hear more about what successes you have in recruiting. Back to you, Jenny.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Hugo. Everyone, we'll give a virtual round of applause for Hugo for sharing this. A few housekeeping things. Keep an eye on your email for the next membership chat. I'm hearing that we need to talk about retention again, so we'll add that as the topic. So come with your great ideas to share and great questions to ask, because our membership chats are really the most robust when we have people really engaged like everyone was tonight. So please help us get a good crowd here for our next membership chat. I did drop a teaser in the chat about the new member orientation workshops. Those are those Frankenstein sessions that some of you have heard a little bit about. So I'll be reaching out to clubs and AG areas that might want to host one of those sessions to help your club build a new member orientation program that works for your club and that matches the culture and identity of your club. So thank you again to Hugo for all that he does. I don't know how many, I'll have to total up how many note cards he has written in the last couple of years, but it's a lot. He's gone through a lot of stamps. So I've been felt so lucky that Hugo joined this team and that he and I've gotten to work together for the last couple of years. I learned so much from this man and value him so much. So we are certainly lucky as a district to have him. But thank you all for spending your hour with us this evening. Thanks for all that you do. And I hope that you all have a list by the new year of all the folks that you want to reach out to. So thank you so much and have a good evening. You'll get an email with a slide deck and a link.
If anybody wants a copy of that PowerPoint for the fireside chat, if you send me an email, I'll send it to you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for being willing to share.
Thank you.
I'll put my email address in the chat.
Yeah, watch, if you send it to Jenny, Jenny can send it out to all of us.
Yeah, I could do that. If you want to email it to me, I could include it in the message that goes out to everyone.
Okay, what, wait a minute. Okay.
I'll send you an email. That way you have mine. And
You send me an email and I'll send it back to you.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank